The dog moved before the man did. 1 second, Rex was a statue at Jason Miller's boots. The next, he was up, tense, blocking the aisle like he'd spotted a threat no one else could see. Jason's hand snapped to the leash. "Rex, down!" The command should have landed like steel. It didn't. Rain smeared the train windows into liquid shadows as every nearby passenger went still. A coffee lid rolled in a slow circle under a seat. A child stopped crying mid-breath. Across from Jason, the old man with mud on his boots lowered himself into the last open seat as if none of it were strange at all. Robert Hayes. 63, maybe. Weathered face, faded coat, canvas bag worn pale at the seams. Rex stepped closer to him. Jason's pulse kicked hard. Rex had faced gunfire, smoke, screaming men. He had never broken command for anyone, never drifted, never guessed. Robert rested one rough hand near the dog's neck, not touching, just close. Easy. One word, soft, calm. Rex folded to the floor instantly. Jason stared. The old man looked ahead, not at him, not at the dog. "Long ride to D.C., he said. Jason didn't answer. He was too busy watching the details. The scar on Robert's wrist, old and clean. The back, straight as a rifle rod. The eyes in the dark window reflection, not wandering, measuring exits, doors, people. The conductor reached them, glanced at Robert's ticket, then glanced again. His face changed for half a second. Not fear. Recognition. Then he moved on too quickly. Jason leaned in. "You know dogs?" "Some." That was it. No smile, no story. The train hit a tunnel. Lights flickered. For one black second, the carriage became a mirror full of ghosts. When the lights came back, Rex had shifted again, pressing against Robert's boots, alert but settled, like he'd found something familiar after years of waiting. Jason tightened his jaw. "He doesn't do that." Robert finally turned. His expression stayed gentle. His eyes did not. They were sharp enough to cut glass. "Maybe he remembers better than people do." Up ahead, a man in a business coat slipped a hand toward an unattended briefcase. Robert saw it without moving his head. "Don't." The man froze. Just one word, flat, final. He sat back like he'd been struck. Jason felt the air change around them. Not louder, quieter, more dangerous. Then the train began to slow, and through the rain-blurred glass, the Pentagon emerged. Rex rose before the brakes even hissed, ears forward, body rigid with something that looked a lot like respect. Rex hesitated. For the first time in years, the dog looked past Jason's command and checked another man first. That tiny flick of the eyes hit harder than a gunshot. Jason kept his face still. Under the seat, 2 fingers curled in the silent recalibration signal. Rex saw it, held, then obeyed, a beat late, only after Robert Hayes gave the faintest shift of his hand on the canvas bag. No one else in the car noticed. Jason noticed everything. Rain dragged across the windows. The train hammered south. Robert sat loose, almost sleepy, staring at the gray blur outside, but nothing about him was relaxed. 3 rows ahead, a teenager drifted a hand toward a banker's briefcase. Jason caught the move a second too late. Robert caught it first. He slid one boot half an inch. That was all. The boy froze as if he'd touched a live wire, swallowed hard, and pulled back. Jason turned. Robert kept looking out the window. Then the train snapped over a switch. The whole car lurched. An elderly woman pitched sideways, her cane skittering. Before Jason could rise, Robert's foot hooked the cane cleanly, planted it upright, and steadied her without even leaving his seat. The motion was smooth, exact, trained. Not farm reflexes, something older, sharper. Jason's stare dropped to Robert's hands. Thick knuckles, dirt in the creases, calluses from labor. But the wrists were wrong, scarred, controlled. The posture was wrong too, straight spine, loose shoulders, head angled to track reflections in the glass. He wasn't riding the train. He was mapping it. Rex pressed closer, not needy, devoted. When Robert's hand hovered near the dog's collar, Rex's breathing slowed. His muscles loosened, but his eyes stayed hard on the aisle. Jason felt it then, cold and undeniable. The dog wasn't merely calm around this man. He was reporting to him. Jason glanced at the old canvas bag. A stitched patch covered something removed years ago. A name? A unit? On Robert's ticket sleeve, a faded row of numbers flashed and vanished beneath his thumb. Not a seat code. Too clean, too deliberate. Across the aisle, a businessman muttered, "Pentagon stop in 10. Robert changed at the word, barely. A stillness inside the stillness. An off-duty transit officer entered from the next car, scanning faces out of habit. Then he saw Robert. He stopped dead. His shoulders straightened on instinct. His mouth opened. Shut. Robert gave him one small nod. The officer moved on fast, shaken. Washington's skyline began to gather through the rain. Jason looked at the old man beside him and understood the worst part. He was no longer sitting next to a mystery. He was sitting next to history that had learned how to disappear. The doors hissed open, and the whole train seemed to hold its breath. Then everyone moved at once, except the space around Robert Hayes. That cleared on its own, as if the crowd felt something they couldn't name and chose not to cross it. Jason rose with Rex, but the dog was already up, already locked in, standing at heel between them. Jason hadn't given a command. Robert had only shifted his shoulders, barely anything. Yet Rex responded like he'd heard a signal older than words. The platform hit them in a rush of noise. Metal shrieks, clipped announcements, wet footsteps, the smell of rain and hot brakes. Commuters surged past. Uniforms flashed. Cameras turned in black domes overhead. Robert never slowed. He stepped into the chaos and cut through it with eerie precision, taking turns before signs appeared, choosing gaps before crowds formed, moving like a man who had walked this ground in other decades, under other names. Jason followed, not close enough to be obvious, not far enough to lose him. Outside, Washington waited under a low iron sky. Pentagon shuttles idled in line. Federal sedans rolled through barricades. Guards scanned badges with dead eyes until Robert reached the checkpoint. A young Marine took the old man's worn ID, glanced down, then froze. His jaw tightened. He looked up again, straighter this time, as if the card had changed in his hand. He returned it without a word. 20 feet away, an older guard caught sight of Robert and stepped aside immediately. No salute, no greeting. Worse than that. Recognition. Jason felt it land in his gut. His training started filling the silence with impossible answers. Buried units, unnamed commands, men erased from records but not from memory. Then the black sedan appeared. No call, no escort waving it in. It was simply there, waiting. The rear door opened before Robert reached it. A silver-haired officer stepped out, composed, polished, senior enough that people nearby suddenly found reasons to look away. The moment he saw Robert, something broke through the mask. Relief, sharp and private, followed by guilt. He extended a hand. Robert took it like an equal, not a civilian, not a visitor, not even a veteran. An equal. Rex stayed perfectly still, calm as stone. Jason saw it then, a weathered insignia pin tucked inside Robert's coat. small, nearly hidden. But Jason knew the shape from rumors, from blacked-out files, from stories told only by drunk men who stopped talking when sober. Robert glanced back once, not dramatic, not warm, just one look, steady and knowing, like a warning wrapped in mercy. Then he got into the car. The sedan slid through the gates. Rex strained after it. And Jason Miller stood in the rain, staring at the disappearing glass, realizing he had just watched a legend return from the dead. Rex refused the order. That hit Jason harder than mortar fire ever had. Move! The dog didn't. He sat at the curb facing the gate where Robert Hayes had vanished, ears up, body locked, as if waiting for a command Jason couldn't hear. Rain ticked on concrete. Security lights flashed across pavement. Jason felt the aftershock roll through him, colder than fear, cleaner than adrenaline. Then the fractures started. A colonel stepped out of an entrance, laughing into a tablet, saw the black sedan and stopped dead mid-sentence. Two civilian analysts near the shuttle lane lowered their voices. One looked over his shoulder. A staff officer hurrying past with folders caught sight of the car and whispered a name Jason almost heard. Almost. The silence after it was worse than the word. Jason clipped Rex closer, flashed his credentials, and pushed through a checkpoint before the moment cooled. Inside, fluorescent light, polished floors, faces trained not to react. He found a contact in operations, a man who had briefed teams in Kabul without blinking. Jason asked one question. The man's expression changed instantly. Not confusion, warning. "No file you'll access," he said. "Let it go." Jason held his ground. The contact leaned in, voice lower. Records thin, names buried, missions unlisted, but the rumors survived. A handler before the doctrine was written, an operator who trained dogs to read breath, intent, fear, a man sent into places that never happened, then erased so completely people argued whether he had retired, disappeared, or died. Jason stepped back like he'd been shoved. Now every detail rearranged itself. The wrists, the command, the way Robert stopped danger without spectacle, corrected people without shaming them, moved like authority that never needed to announce itself. Outside, dusk sharpened the Pentagon into black angles. "Rex," Jason said again. This time the dog rose slowly. He took steps, then paused and looked back toward the entrance, ears lifted, waiting. Jason followed the dog's gaze to the doors and understood. Men like Robert Hayes did not come back for ceremonies. They came back when something buried woke up.